Our arch rivals running for president, Dole and Clinton, pushed everybody to sign it.
I'm pleased to announce that an understanding has been reached with Senator Dole. For the past 50 years, our country has led the world to create a more open and a more prosperous trading economy.
I will be writing a personal letter to each of my Republican colleagues in the Senate, enclosing all of this material, asking them to read it very carefully and suggesting that, in my view, we ought to be all in support of GATT when it comes up next week.
They don't know what it says! Do you understand the implications of that? It's time to wake up! And I'm here ringing the bell. Because nothing works. Healthcare, welfare, taxation, education, inflation, deflation, politicians lying, people dying, police state, subjugate, corruption, 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 corruption! Are you mad yet? Yeah. Let me hear I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Come on. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. We're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. Remember, fighting for freedom is an old American tradition. We will not be denied. Recently, the Associated Press reported the results of a national poll asking Americans if they trusted their government. 70% did not. One of the reasons this figure is so high is people are becoming more aware that we have all but lost our rights to due process and the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. A man's home is no longer his castle. Tonight's show is going to focus on asset forfeiture. Using that catchphrase, government agencies can lawfully storm your residence and seize all your assets. That includes your home and your bank accounts. Last year there were over 250,000 asset forfeitures. That's 5,000 every week. And 80% of those victims were never charged with a crime, much less proven guilty of anything. And in some cases, people were even killed in the process.
Captain DeWitt here.
Yeah.
I'm on a search warrant with the Hidden Hills crew on this marijuana eradication thing.
Yes.
And they just, looks like 927D here.
At the location?
Yeah.
Somebody there?
No, we put him down.
We killed him?
Yeah.
It's scary, you know. I never, ever would have thought that I would witness my husband executed, literally executed, third world country style.
Donald Scott died in his living room on October 2nd, 1992, gunned down by police. Now, his widow says that Donald was the victim of a law that makes the seizure of private land so financially attractive to law enforcement agencies that they have begun to assume private citizens guilty till proven innocent. The story begins here at Trails End Ranch, 200 acres in Malibu, California. Current value $5 million. Landowner Donald Scott was a multi-millionaire due to a family inheritance. He was handsome, prosperous, and married to Frances Plant, a woman half his age. But their passion for each other blinded them to age differences.
I would tell him he's 61 going on 16. He had so much energy, and he was just so much fun to be around. We had the best time. We just had a ball. I don't think any two people have ever been happier.
But their idyllic life at Trails End soon became a Gothic nightmare.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to Rancho Sierra Vista Satwewa on behalf of the National Park Service.
In the 30 years since Donald Scott purchased his ranch, the National Park Service had bought up every available land parcel surrounding Trails End, making Scott's land a choice morsel for federal acquisition. The Park Service judged Trails End crucial to complete its federal land acquisitions agenda. Friends say that the Park Service had approached Donald repeatedly about selling, but he refused.
Donald always had a feeling that the government would do something, or the national park wanted this land to the point of where they would do anything to get this land, even kill him.
Ironically, Scott predicted his own death, but it was not by the Park Service. 2 years ago, the L.A. County Sheriff's Department claimed they had received an anonymous tip about Trails End Ranch. Captain Larry Waldy ran the narcotics unit at the time.
We then got a tip from a reliable informant that, in fact, that large amounts of marijuana were growing there.
It was 1993. L.A. County was in fiscal crisis. Law enforcement budgets were scant, and like other agencies, the Sheriff's Department was scrambling for extra funds. More and more, they were forced to rely on the proceeds of drug busts to supplement crippled budgets. In effect, our civil servants became revenue producers. Discovering drugs on private land allows a law enforcement agency to seize the property, sell it, and take the profits. That is called asset forfeiture. It is highly controversial in that it gives an incentive to law enforcement agencies to say that drugs exist, to pretend that drugs exist, even when there aren't any. Financially motivated to confirm the anonymous tip, Deputy Sheriff Gary Spencer ordered aerial reconnaissance, and DEA agent Charles Stowell complied. In a flyover the ranch, he claimed he saw 50 marijuana plants attached to lines suspended from tree branches.
There is virtually no way that Stowell could have seen through that canopy of trees. It's like a rainforest. It's impenetrable.
Michael Bradbury is district attorney for Ventura County. His investigators studied the Scott case for months. Their findings were explosive, concluding the L.A. Sheriff's Department was motivated in part to seize the ranch for the government.
I think Agent Stowell was under tremendous pressure from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office in the person of Deputy Spencer to come up with the opinion that marijuana was being cultivated on the ranch. As a matter of fact, after Stowell initially said that he had seen marijuana, he called Spencer back and said, "I am not comfortable with you using my name, and you have to corroborate me."
Despite Agent Stowell's reservations, the Sheriff's Department marshaled ground teams from the National Park Service and the Border Patrol. But even their ground surveillance turned up no marijuana. Nevertheless, law enforcement still commandeered a search warrant and ordered the troops to move in.
27 people were at the scene. There were at least 5 different agencies. We had the National Park Service there because we worked with them in dealing with the marijuana eradication program. LAPD was there and DEA was there. Coupled with that is the National Guard that we worked with.
There was a crash and the house started shaking. And when I first realized it wasn't an earthquake, and I saw a man's face looking at me through the window. Here these men come running towards me, and I'm backing into my living room, screaming, "Don't shoot me, don't kill me." My husband heard me, and he came out into the living room screaming, "Frances, are you all right?" And he had his gun pointed up in the air, and he looked at me and they yelled, "Put your gun down, put your gun down, put your gun down," and that was the last thing he said, and they just murdered him. This picture of these men was taken moments after they killed him by their own sheriff's department, and they're smiling like I don't know what.
The troops searched the entire property, including a grove of trees where the 50 marijuana plants were allegedly spotted by aerial reconnaissance. And there was no marijuana.
But we found some lines suggesting the block and tackle method on some of the trees in that general vicinity.
There's no evidence that there were ropes and lines there.
I will never be able to be convinced they came here to serve a search warrant.
So why did 5 government agencies storm the house that morning? Was the raid on Donald Scott's property part of a government conspiracy to obtain his land for the Park Service under asset forfeiture laws? Does that sound too far-fetched to you? Not if you consider the findings of the DA's office. Curiously, the district attorney's investigation yielded these documents. They were passed out during a briefing before the raid, a property appraisal of the 200-acre ranch and a map, including a notation by Agent Stowell that a neighboring 80-acre parcel had recently sold for $800,000. The district attorney doesn't understand why a search for drugs would include such information unless seizing Scott's land was law enforcement's motive.
I think this is simply a case of a good officer, very aggressive, who lost his moral compass, saw an opportunity to have his star rise rapidly in the department by seizing a significant asset.
In fact, current Park Service land acquisition policies across the United States are under scrutiny, considered heavy-handed, and in some cases illegal. As for Donald's murder, Frances insists that her husband was in the process of lowering his gun when he was shot.
It was just pointed up in the air. He didn't have a chance to obey their deadly command of put your gun down anyway. They just blew him away.
And Frances's nightmare just kept getting worse. Months after Donald's murder, the ranch house burned down. Frances says it may have been arson.
The house is burned down because the national park refused to let the Ventura Fire Department put out the fire. They could have made a very simple fire break. They had all their equipment there just to make one little fire break, and the national park stopped them. They said it is against our park policy to disturb the natural beauty of our park land. And now, guess what? Now the IRS wants to force a sale of this land to make us pay death taxes.
So let me get this right. One agency of the government comes in and kills your husband, and now that he's dead, another agency of the government comes in and wants the land.
Well, they haven't met me yet. They're not going to get this land. I couldn't believe this could happen in our country. I couldn't believe my father has fought in 2 wars for us to be safe in our homes. And for this to happen in America it's unbelievable.
That piece was absolutely frightening. And the fact that the 2 deputies who shot Donald Scott are still in service only goes to prove the point that the government is unaccountable. We are very fortunate to have with us on today's show 3 of America's foremost experts on asset forfeiture. Brenda Grantland is a graduate of George Washington University's Law School. She presently serves on the board of directors of FEAR, Forfeiture Endangers American Rights. And Jeffrey Steinborn is a graduate of Yale Law School and a prominent Seattle attorney who specializes in asset forfeitures. Judy Osborne is a hooker from Santa Monica Boulevard. No, I'm just kidding.